Ever wonder what makes pancakes taste so good? It's all thanks to one thing: maple syrup that's sweet. Golden liquid that drips off your pancakes and waffles. The ultimate breakfast treat. But here's the cool part. Did you know maple syrup comes from trees? Yeah, trees. And get this, making maple syrup isn't as easy as shaking a tree and watching the syrup pour out. It's way cooler than that. It starts with a tree, takes some science, and ends with a delicious golden bottle. So in this video, we're diving into the world of maple syrup, from its history to how it's made. You'll learn it all, but before we talk about that, let's take a step back. How did someone figure out that you can make syrup from a tree? Well, the story of maple syrup goes way back, like hundreds of years back. It all started with Native Americans in North America. They were the first ones to figure out that maple trees held a secret. Inside the tree, there was a sap that could be turned into something sweet and delicious. Legend says they discovered it by accident. Some say a tree was tapped, and the sap dripped into a cooking pot. When the sap was boiled, it turned into syrup. When the Europeans arrived, they learned the technique from Native Americans, and then they started making syrup too. Using new tools and techniques, the process was much easier. And over time, syrup became more than just food. It became a tradition. Families would gather around during the maple season to collect sap and boil it down into syrup. It wasn't just about the syrup, it was about spending time together. A few hundred years later, maple syrup became a big part of life in places like Canada and Vermont, and they became pros at it. Today, Canada produces about 70% of the world maple syrup. That's a lot of pancakes covered in golden sweetness. Not many people know this, but maple syrup was once used as a trade item. People valued it so much that they'd use it like money. It wasn't just a topping, it was special. Pretty sweet history, right? Now that we know where it all started, it's time to find out why maple syrup is so unique. We know that it's sweet and tasty, but there is a lot more to it than that. First, maple syrup is completely natural. It's not made in a factory or cooked up in a lab. It comes straight from the tree. Something so delicious is made by nature itself. Another thing that makes maple syrup stand out is its flavor. It's not just sugary. Instead, it has a rich, caramel-like taste with a hint of nuttiness. It's a flavor you can't get from any other sweetener. And guess what? The taste can even change, depending on where it's made or the time of year it's harvested. Plus, it takes some sweet effort. It takes about 40 gallons of sap to make just 1 gallon of syrup. Yep, you heard that right. That's a lot of work for 1 bottle of syrup. No wonder it's so valuable. But it's not just about taste. Maple syrup is actually healthier than many other sweeteners, especially since it has natural sugars and even contains minerals like zinc and manganese. So next time you drizzle it on your pancakes, you can feel a little better about it. And maple syrup is a miracle from nature. Trees spend the whole year storing energy just to produce sap during the spring. It's like they're giving us a sweet little gift after a long winter. Doesn't that make every drop feel even more special? Now that we know why it's so loved, it's time to dive into the step-by-step process of how it's made. This is where the real work begins. It's not just pouring sap out of a tree, like turning on a faucet. There's a lot of steps involved, and it all starts with tapping the trees. The process begins in late winter or early spring, when the weather is just right. Maple trees need cold nights and warmer days to get the sap flowing. Once that happens, it's time to tap. But how do they do it? First, a small hole is drilled into the tree trunk. Then a special spout is inserted into the hole. This is called a spiral. This spiral is what allows the sap to flow out of the tree. And for all you nature lovers, don't worry, tapping doesn't hurt the tree. It's like giving the tree a little straw to share some of its sap. Before, people used buckets to collect the sap dripping from the spiral. You might have even seen pictures of trees with metal buckets hanging off them. That's the old school way. But these days, many producers use a more modern system with tubes that connect the trees. This way, the sap flows directly into a big tank. It's faster, easier, and helps collect even more sap. Now that the trees are tapped, it's time to collect the sap. Here's something surprising. The sap isn't thick or super sweet when it comes out of the tree. In fact, it looks and tastes almost like water. That's because it's mostly water. with just a tiny bit of sugar in it. The sap flows best when the temperature rises above freezing during the day. It slows down again when the temperature dips below freezing. At night, this creates pressure in the tree. That pushes the sap out. Producers check the tanks or buckets regularly to gather the sap before it stops flowing. The amount of sap a tree gives can vary, but a healthy maple tree can produce about 10 to 20 gallons in one season. When the sap is collected, it's taken to the next step. This is where the watery sap is turned into rich, golden syrup. The next step is boiling the sap. And this is where all the hard work starts paying off. The sap might look like plain water at first, but once it's boiled, it starts changing into the syrup we know and love. The process begins with a giant piece of equipment called an evaporator. It's like a big flat pan that gets really hot. The sap is poured into the evaporator and heated to remove most of the water. And as the water evaporates, the sugar in the sap becomes more concentrated. That's how the flavor and texture of the syrup start to develop. And if you've ever been near an evaporator during this process, you'll know how amazing it smells. The air fills with a warm, sweet aroma that's just incredible. It's like a giant cloud of maple candy. But boiling isn't just about removing water. The temperature has to be perfect. Maple syrup is ready when it reaches about 219 degrees Fahrenheit. Any hotter, and it might turn into candy. Any cooler, and it's still just sap. So it's all about precision. When the sap thickens and turns to a perfect golden brown color, it's finally ready to be called syrup. But we're not done yet. After boiling, the syrup goes through a refining process to make it smooth and pure. This step removes any natural debris or sugar crystals that might still be in the syrup. First, the syrup is filtered. Producers use special filters to strain out something called sugar sand. Sugar sand isn't actually sand. They are natural minerals from the sap. While it's harmless, it can make the syrup look cloudy. So your best bet is to remove it. When it's filtered, the syrup is graded. Grading syrup doesn't mean giving it a score. It's all about classifying its color and flavor. The syrup can range from light golden to dark amber, with flavors that go from mild to rich. This grading helps producers decide how to package the syrup. And it also helps you know what kind of flavor to expect, whether you like a delicate taste or a bold one. There's a grade of maple syrup for everyone. It's almost done, but not quite. Before the syrup makes its way to bottling, it goes through an important step: quality assurance. Every batch of maple syrup is carefully evaluated. To meet strict standards, producers check for its color, clarity, and flavor to make sure it's up to par. Then it's time to sort them. Maple syrup is graded into categories like golden amber, dark, and very dark. Each category offers a unique flavor profile. To qualify as grade A syrup must have the right sugar content and a uniform color. It also needs the taste perfect, with no off flavors. Syrup that doesn't meet these criteria might still be used for processing, but won't hit store shelves. This step makes sure that every bottle you buy has the same high-quality taste. When the grading is complete, the syrup has to go through some serious testing. Tools like hydrometers and refractometers are used. They measure the syrup's sugar concentration, and the ideal range is typically around 66 to 68% sugar. Again, we need to be precise here. If there's not enough sugar, it's not syrup yet, and if there's too much sugar, you get crystals then. Special devices are used to measure how much light passes through the syrup. This helps confirm that the color matches its grade. And then some lucky taste testers sample the syrup to check its flavor. They make sure it matches the expected taste for its grade. With quality assurance and testing complete, the syrup is now prepared for the final step: bottling and packaging. Now the syrup is refined and perfect. This is where we get to finally enjoy the syrup. The freshly refined syrup is poured into bottles while it's still hot. The temperature is usually around 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? Because sealing it while it's hot helps keep the syrup fresh and delicious. When it's bottled, the syrup cools down and forms a vacuum seal. This keeps it safe from spoiling and tasting like it was just made. Plus, it's all about the presentation. Some producers use simple plastic jugs, while others go for fancy glass bottles. You've probably seen those leaf-shaped bottles, right? They don't add to the taste, but they sure do make the syrup look extra fancy. These bottles are perfect for a gift. But that's not all. Each bottle or jug gets a label that tells you the grade and where it was made. Some producers even include a little backstory about their farm or their process. And to make sure everything stays authentic, producers usually include a tamper-proof seal. This guarantees that the syrup hasn't been touched or altered, cause it's all about making sure you get the purest, most delicious syrup possible. When it's bottled, the syrup is stored in a cool, dry place until it's shipped out. Then it travels to stores, markets, and maybe even straight to your table. But even if this practice is all about tradition, there are some major changes happening. The impact of climate change is everywhere now, and producers have to take action. Now it's all about trying out new methods that protect maple trees. One big step is using more efficient tubing systems to reduce waste. These systems capture sap more effectively and also minimize the energy needed for collection. Some producers are also using vacuum pumps to keep the sap flowing efficiently. Plus, evaporators can be improved. The modern ones are designed to use less fuel during the syrup making process. And renewable energy sources are all the rage right now. Wood pellets or solar power can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions during the boiling process. If you're a big maple syrup producer, you might be part of reforestation projects. This helps replace older ones, and you get a sustainable supply for the future. Others manage their forests to support wildlife habitats. This helps keep the ecosystem around maple trees balanced and healthy. But if you're not someone who likes pancakes with maple syrup on it, that doesn't mean you can enjoy it. There are so many other ways to eat it. For starters, did you know you can use it in baking? It adds a natural sweetness to cookies, muffins, and cakes. Some people even drizzle it on roasted veggies for a little extra flavor. Sweet and healthy, yes please. And in places like Canada, maple syrup is more than just a treat. It's part of their culture. The maple leaf is even on their flag. To show their love for nature and tradition, people celebrate this connection by visiting maple syrup festivals. At these festivals, families head to sugar houses to watch syrup being made and even taste it fresh from the source. Some festivals even offer special treats like maple candy or maple taffy. But maple syrup isn't just food. It also plays a role in the economy. Many small farms rely on maple syrup production, especially in places like Vermont and Quebec. It's a livelihood for these producers. So from recipes to traditions, maple syrup finds a way to touch so many aspects of life. It's truly one of nature's sweetest gifts. Think about it, maple syrup starts a sap inside a tree that spends the whole year gathering energy. Then through tapping, boiling, refining, and packaging, that sap transforms into the syrup we love. It's a process that's been perfected over generations. It's a yummy blend of old traditions with modern techniques. And that wraps up our deep dive into maple syrup. If you enjoyed learning about this sweet treat, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel for more insights on how everyday items are made. Oh, and don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. The rich, real maple flavors. While long cabins want more people, you love from maple flavor of long cabin delicious.